Well, anyways, are you
Anyway,
ready?
yeah, I'm ready.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Mapmaking Spotlight Show.
Yeah,
Today we're going to be talking about sublayers and nexuses, both of which are really useful in their own way. I'm here
yeah.
with Skyhawk as well.
Hello. Alright. This is going to be a bit of a shorter episode, probably, just because I want to talk about some concepts that'll be helpful for polishing competition maps, or making nexuses is just helpful for that half of the competition in general. Let's talk about sublayers first.
Yeah, sublayers are a really interesting tool that allow you to kind of have more layers to work with. One of the things they're commonly used for a lot is being able to change the color of dust without changing the color of your tiles on layer 19.
Yeah.
Same goes for spikes. There's also a couple of other things they can be used for, as we'll show later.
So, to make a sublayer fog trigger, step 1, place a fog trigger. Um, let's make it so that this is not just a black sky. Let's brighten that a little bit. Stars, no stars. Alright. Let's make it a little bit brighter. Why not? Not actually explaining anything, just fiddling with a fog trigger. Okay. Sure, that's good enough. Oh, and of course we want to not have 50% black all the time. So, to get something into Sublayer mode, there is a binding in Dustmod under Tools Editor called the Editor Aux key. By default, it's backtick or tilde, but you can set it to whatever. And if we have a fog trigger and we press that button, let's set up some colors first. Let's make this kind of greenish, why not? And then have some other layer here for these, whitish. Alright, great. So now, if we press backtick, we can see that the number of just color swatches here changes, and the colors in them kind of all correspond to the layer that we're on. So here we can see all of the sublayers for layer 19. If we want to see the sublayers for a different layer, then we just select that layer in our list. And we can change these all together like we would in a normal fog trigger, except using this kind of bulk slider down here. We can change all of the colors together like we would in a normal fog trigger with this new bottom left color picker. And you can also just set a hex code. So if you prefer to work that way. Yeah. This slider here is still just the fade timer, so if you have multiple fog triggers, it'll fade between them with that speed. So this fog trigger was set to instantly fade, and this one was set to fade more slowly. So you can see it kind of shifts to red, and then if I walk over here, instantly becomes green. Anyway, that's part of just normal fog triggers, not sub-trigger related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on these fog triggers, there's a couple of special layers. Why don't we talk about that, Skyhawk?
Sure. So if you hover over these numbers, it'll give you a kind of readout of what each sublayer is used for. 19 and 18 will have special sublayers that have things that are only on that layer. For example, the player is only on layer 18. But you will also have just all the background layers will we'll have this default just tile set information. So if we get some tiles on here.
Come to think about it, can you not place tiles on layer 18?
You cannot. If you try to place them on layer 18, then they will not appear there. Instead, they will appear on layer 19.
Huh. I don't know if I ever actually knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, 18 is exclusively for entities. You can kind of think of 18 and 19 as two halves of the same layer.
Interesting.
Alex is saying apparently you can get around that if you kind of hack the level format with something like Dustmaker.
Oh, I could imagine. Just something I hadn't ever realized before.
Oh, the shape tool lets you do it too. Neat.
Okay.
So, let's say, for example, we want to change this dust color. So what we do, we know that dust is on layer 19. We come over here, we look for dust, it's on sublayer 14, and we can change this color. And then we can make it brighter, for example. And there we go, that's it. Now we have dust that really stands out. This is really helpful if you are doing a map in a style where all the layers are 100% fog intensity. When you have a map that kind of uses this style, it's super hard to see the dust.
Yeah, something like Giga Difficult is another great example of that.
Yeah.
It's
just like
limitation of the
purple.
original editor.
Here, you know what? Let's actually go to Giga, and let's do something there.
Yeah, I think Giga Difficult is a great example of this. It is really hard to see the dust on Giga at times.
Yeah. So here we've got purple blocks, we've got purple dust. It's really hard to see. And if we look at layer 19, it's almost full intensity purple. So what we can do here, right now this is a normal layer trigger. If we press tilde or backtick to make it go into sublayer mode, we go and find the dust layer, and then we change this to some color that contrasts. And then we make it brighter. And there we go. Now the dust stands out way more, and you can actually see whether you missed something or not.
Yeah, I remember this was one of my biggest frustrations when I was grinding this level, is it was really hard at times to see if you actually missed dust. You ended up having to just know where your combo counter is supposed to be.
Yeah. One thing you might notice though is that these dust particles are still purple. That's because those are on a different sublayer. So if we look at these different things, sometimes you can just mess with it and try to figure out which one it is. But my first guess would be this dust emitter idle on 0. And there we go, we're right. Are there any other dust emitters? 9 is a dust emitter. For adding
dust emitter add and remove.
Yeah. And I see add and remove there. And that should be all of the dust emitters. So now, even when we clear it, it's orange particles.
Yep, and as a note, enemies are still separate from that in both their appearance and their particles.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess, here, let's stay in Giga for a little
Made
bit.
that add and remove refers to the particles that are created when you clear the dust, basically.
Yeah, so for example, if I come here and let's say I change the idle color, and I don't change the add and remove color. So the particles right now are orange, but when I clear the dust, I remove the dust, the particles that shoot out in all directions are still purple.
Yeah, then add refers to when you would place them down in the editor. You get some amount of particles that come out.
Or I think it's when you, like, clear an enemy. So if I were to place them.
Oh, that makes sense too. Yeah.
Although enemy particles are like a different thing. Maybe that's not it. I'm not quite sure what add is then. It's good to change it anyway, I guess.
In no harm.
Yeah, exactly. Alright. here. Yeah, so another thing that's also purple and maybe hard to see is these spikes. So what we can do is we can change those as well. If we just find spikes. Here we go. Let's maybe make it a bluer purple. No, that seems to make it even harder to see. Let's make it a pinker purple. There we go. Don't want to make it too garish, so let's do it like that. That's nice and subtle, but it still stands out. And then
That
it's all
said, you obviously still have to work quite a bit to get the balance right on all of these things as well.
exactly. Yeah, it comes down to taste and what you want your colors to look like. But this just gives you finer control over what turns each color.
Yep.
Alright, next one.
I like the visibility of this Giga a lot more. I don't know that I like the
These exact
aesthetic
colors.
of this Giga a lot more.
Fair enough. One important thing to note about sublayer triggers. So you can change this back to a normal trigger by pressing tilde again, and you can see it goes back to normal, but this isn't just like an alternate view. If you try to change the trigger in this mode, it'll revert to a regular trigger. So if we just change this slider, all of the dust immediately goes back to purple. So we lose all of our sublayer information. And if we try to put it back in sublayer mode, it's not even still here, it's all gone. So once you get it in sublayer mode, make sure not to change it back, because you might just lose everything. Yeah, even if I change other layers, so if I just, let's go dust and spikes, there we go. And so now if I go and change a different layer, yeah, still reverts, so. A good practice generally is to set up your main colors while you're in layer mode, and then switch it over to sublayer mode and mess with your sublayers. So it's kind of like the final step you do. So get everything looking the way you want, switch it into sublayer mode, and then make your dust visible or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, unless you have some very specific intent in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll look at what you can do for that too.
Now, this Giga difficult. I like this one a lot.
Yeah? I think maybe the purple's too bright here. I would have made it
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit subtler. Let's go like that maybe. Anyway.
I just think this fits with the overall theming better.
Yeah, just like the mono-colored purple theme, just with the more difference between colors.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, tile edges. Yes, of course. So another thing here that you can change on every layer, not just layer 19, is the tile interior, tile edge, left, right, bottom, top. So if we change just this, we can see now that the inside of the tile is the new color we set, but the edges all stay the old color. And this is a nice way to kind of get like just a shading sort of effect on your blocks. So if we let's leave that way, and then let's go bottom. Let's set it to a darker color, and then sides, sure, why not them too? And then tops we keep the lighter color. Sides maybe not that dark. Yeah, and so it kind of gives this depth to the block, even when you're working with 100% intensity colors. So you can have the flat colors and still have a bit of depth to your blocks.
Yeah, another thing I find this really useful for is virtual levels, where you might want some kind of range of colors using just the virtual blocks, or you might only want to have edges on everything you're doing.
Oh, yeah, so let's take a look at that.
You
So
can
if we
make
set
kind of
these
like
all to black again.
half virtual levels where you have like regular tiles, but you have kind of these edges that look virtual still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if now I have a completely solid background color, so if I come here and I turn the interior all black, then it kind of looks like these tiles in the middle have disappeared, or they've just blended into the background, and all you get is this collision line. And then if I wanted to go even further, I could set the bottom to this, and even the sides if I wanted, but I've got some walls here, so I don't want to do that. I would
and an interesting note with this is you don't even have to use virtual tiles to get this effect. You can do this with a lot of different tile types, and it looks varying degrees of good.
Yeah. Here, let's try it with these lab tiles. There you go. There's a nice thicker line.
Yeah, and it kind of changes that outside line a bit.
Yeah.
And it's really nice.
Yeah. Let's see some sublayers in action.
Yeah.
Alright, first one I'm going to look at is Brinstar Volcano by Zake. It's one of the custom map jam maps. And so here we can kind of see that tile edge behavior, where he's got the tile edges are red, just different shades of red for the top and the sides and the bottom. And then he's got the tile interior is black. And so it makes the collision really stand out.
Yeah, I think in this one as well, you've also got different colors for spikes and dust as compared to the tile interiors as well.
Yeah, we've got this gray dust compared to the black and red tiles, and then if we go forward so that we see some spikes.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, if these tiles were entirely black, it might be really hard to see this dust.
Yeah, actually let's... Oh, I see he's kind of got rocks on over top of all the tile, or over top of all the spikes. So you don't really see the spikes themselves. I'll guess. Okay. Alright.
That ending is so scary.
Yeah, right? Yeah, let's try messing with this fog trigger. So, we got some orange, and then, so how much work do we have to do to, here, let me just reset this entirely. How much work do we have to do to actually get that effect going?
Oh man, those are just rocks?
Yeah, all just rocks. He's got a few different types of rocks in here.
Man, those look so different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell once they're at full intensity. So if we go like this, what is this other layer that he's using?
So like 15 or 12?
There we go. It's 8.
Oh, interesting.
And let's
It's not what I would imagine.
out of the way so that we don't get it. So yeah, just like this, immediately it's hard to see the dust. So step 1, find the dust sublayer. Oh, first, actually step 0, put it into sublayer mode. Find the dust sublayer, make it a nice gray. Now we can see the dust. Step 2, everything looks kind of flat and black. So let's give it some depth. Find the tile edges. Make them red.
Yeah, pretty hard to see those tile edges here.
Tops. Oh, that's not tops. Just fix
No,
that.
Skyhawk, you changed the interior.
I know. That's okay, we fixed it.
Honestly, that looked pretty dope too, not gonna lie.
I don't remember exactly what colors he had here. Here, let's assume it's something like that. I think it actually might have been the other way around.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
Oh.
That's closer to correct.
There we go. And there we go.
Now we have something that looks
It's
fairly
kind of
similar.
Yeah, I think instead of full black for the tile interiors, he had like more of a grayish color.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree.
Let's compare. So this is what I came up with, and then the original Ah, okay. So he didn't have completely full intensity. He still had a little bit of the rock texture showing.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can see how,
Interesting.
yeah, he kind of tapered off the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you still get the texture.
Actually, he did have full intensity on the interior, didn't he?
Almost. I guess you can just barely make out the texture, just to show that it's still rocky.
Yeah. But he didn't have full... Yeah, he got the edges, which is the more important part.
Yeah. Another one. This is Lava Run by AvengedRuler.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah. And again, this is just a simpler effect that you can do. So here it's got dust has just been the only color change. So even without fancy like tile work and changing a bunch of different sublayers, you can just set up your colors the way you want, switch it in the sublayer mode, change the dust, and get a really nice effect.
Yeah, I think literally all I changed on this one was the dust color, and I used one sublayer for props, and that's about all I did.
Yeah. Good segue into talking about sublayers for props. So, one of the other things we didn't mention is what do you do with all the rest of these sublayers that don't have text on them? And what you do is you put props on them. So, here we have just sublayer that doesn't do anything. If we go to our prop tool and we pick a prop, down here next to the eye, we see a little number, 19. This is the sublayer that we're currently placing props on. If we hold Alt and we scroll, then we can see that number changes, and we see when we get to 14, which was the same as the dust sublayer, then it turns this kind of orange-red color. If we change it to 20, which is that layer that we changed to blue, then there we go. Now we get blue props. And we can use this to just have way more space for colors.
Yeah, this is really nice, especially given the limitation on how many layers they are to have, say, 10 plus layers at layer 12 depth to be able to actually work on things with different colors.
Yeah. Yeah, so instead of having to dedicate an entire layer to your colored props, you can just have these extra sublayers that you weren't using anyway.
Yeah, you can use layer controller sometimes to create a similar effect, but yeah. It ends up being a lot more difficult to do it that way in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you wanted to have, say, parallaxing... Oh, here, let's... Not that. I wanted to get rid of... There we go. Get rid of that. And so one of these parallax layers, say something over here, if we wanted to place props on this, then we would need to use the same kind of colors as the base layer.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about this.
Yeah. But what if we wanted this base layer color to be red or something? Then that tints the windows as well. If we didn't want that, then what we can do is, well, we probably want to tint it at least a little bit, but we can control it independently. Maybe make these like orange or... Oh, oops. There we go. Something like that. And so now they're parallaxing at the same rate, but they're a different color.
Yeah.
So it's nice and easy to get that effect without some kind of script.
Skyhawk, when's Apple SS on this map?
Yeah, I still got to get back to it. It's a hard one. Here's a map that uses a lot of colors. So this is Shin's Neon Jungle. And we can see here that he's got a bunch of colors on these light effects.
Right, this map.
Yeah. So if we pull open the fog trigger and take a look at that, let's find out which layer they're on first of all. We can see that actually the way Shin made this fog trigger, everything that he wasn't using is just normal black, 0 intensity. So You can also do it that way, where you just go into sublayer mode immediately and you start setting up exactly the sublayers you want. But that can be, it maybe gives you a bit more control over things, but it can be more finicky.
Yeah, it also ends up being a lot more work, and unless you have a kind of specific purpose for it, it isn't always the best.
Yeah, but now that we have this kind of like bulk color picker, it's not so bad. And yeah, so we can see here on layer 16, he's just got way too many colors to get this color effect going.
Yeah, and for me, this is kind of a really cool effect.
Yeah, and just
this is kind of stuff you literally just don't have enough layers for if you're trying to do it normally.
Yeah, exactly. What is this, like 15, 16 layers here? Yeah.
Yeah. And like you have to consider the fact that like 12 of those are parallax layers too. It's not like you can just use all the layers anyways.
Yeah. Here, one more map with the same idea, just taken to the extreme. This one was made with some automation with Dustmaker, but it just has an absurd number of colors, which is only possible through Dustmaker. So you can see each one of these bands here is a separate prop. It's very fun to delete this rainbow.
Actually, just so absurd how many props that is.
Yeah.
Don't know how this map doesn't lag more than it does.
Right? And so if we come here, we see that 15 is all colors, 14 is all colors, 13, 12. So 4 whole layers just dedicated to coloring this rainbow.
Oh man, I didn't even realize it was that many.
Yeah. So yeah, you have more colors available than you could ever need. Let's see. Final comments on sublayers. If you want to make sure that people are playing on Dustmod, then come over here and select Dustmod. This makes it so that vanilla players can't play your map, because vanilla players won't see your fancy sublayer colors. What they will see is this default for non-Dustmod clients. So if you have just, say you've changed your dust color, and then somebody plays this map on vanilla, it will look like just this, and so it'll be hard to see. So if you want to let people play on vanilla, and you're okay with that different visibility, then you can just leave it as a normal map. And then you can set this to something reasonable. But if you want to make sure that you your players are seeing it the way you intended, then set it to Dustmod. What about sublayer props in vanilla? Sublayers are actually in the vanilla editor. So you can actually, like, this alt plus scroll thing is a vanilla feature. So you can move props. The thing is just that they didn't really intend for you to use this as a coloring tool. It's more of like an ordering tool. So if you want to make sure, oh, I've got this prop and then I want this prop, instead of being in front of this, I want it to be behind it, you can scroll and now it's behind it. So
of note, the props that are on sublayers specifically will probably just show up as the color for non-Dustmod clients, if that is the question. So if you were on vanilla, they wouldn't get any recoloring because of that sublayer.
Oh yeah, if you were playing on vanilla, then just all of your sublayer props would just show up as the normal color, same as the tiles and the dust. Yeah.
Also, Skyhawk, did we want to show a couple examples of tile edges stuff?
Yeah. Here. I've got one more example from the map jam. So this one does some cool stuff. It uses both sublayers to change the dust and the spike colors, but you can also see that they're kind of covered up. That's because it uses layers 20 to kind of cover up just all of the solid tiles that aren't dust blocks. So he was able to have the dust blocks and the solid tiles be different colors.
Oh, interesting.
And then he had grass on here somewhere too. There we go. So actually, it looks like he did use lighter tile edges as well for the dust blocks to make them kind of have depth. But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, we kind of showed off Zake's map that showed tile edges.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten that map had tile edges as well.
Does it change the edges of the turkey too? No, that's a script. Unfortunately, that is a different thing. So that's the entity outliner here. Yeah, otherwise...
Entity outliner script is dope, by the way.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like
if
it
you
hasn't
see a
been
map with
used
this
quite
effect,
as much lately.
Yeah, so if you just go and you download this map 30-minute volcano, you can actually steal this script. If you just come over here and you click on its name, then it'll pop over to the right side here, and then you can use it.
Yeah, Entity Outliner is a really cool script, and I don't think enough people use it anymore.
Alright. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about for sublayers. So we talked about dust, we talked about spikes, we talked about tile edges, we talked about props, we talked about non-Dustmod client, the default layer, and that's pretty much everything that you need to know.
Yeah, sublayers are really simple to start using, and they can do a lot for your control over your map.
Yeah, definitely don't have to go into the fancy prop colorings. Like, even just going and changing the dust color can be a really nice effect. If there's any other questions, I can answer those from chat. Otherwise, let's move on to Nexuses.
Yeah.